Miguel, and of course, I'm very, very pleased and happy that I'm able to the whole group this evening. Para ustedes que hablan español, bienvenidos. Yo soy el reverendo Alberto Rodríguez de Austin. La mayoría del taller o del webinar va a ser en inglés. Y ojalá que haya alguien para traducirles. Dixie, you have some Spanish speakers only. We can't hear.
Oh. Right now we have all bilinguals, but we thought we might have someone coming that would be Spanish speaking only. But she's not here right now.
Okay, very good. Well, we certainly want to welcome everybody, both in English and in Spanish. In addition to what Miguel said about myself, also just recently retired from St. John's Episcopal Church. I was a rector for 15 years. And in the process of being the rector, we developed a dual language congregation or component to our congregation. And it's often going, and somebody else is pastoring at this point. And I have joined another parish that has a Latino Hispanic group, and I'm there on a part-time basis. I'm also teaching at the seminary. I teach a course very similar to what we're going to be discussing tonight. So just for those who are interested, I identify myself as a Mexican American. I'm a third generation Latino, Hispanic, born in San Antonio and raised in San Antonio. And my, as they say in Spanish, my terrenazo is South Texas. That's where I was. That's where I'm linked to culturally and just emotionally and everything else. So just wanted you to understand that this is my background. I've been involved with Hispanic ministry for a good 25 to 30 years, both as a lay person, because I had a lay vocation myself, but also as a priest and seeing the development of Latino Hispanic ministry in the Episcopal Church over the last 30 years or so. And it has been quite a change. I normally ask, when I'm making a presentation like this, for people to think in their minds, what is the image that comes to your mind when somebody tells you or asks you about Latino Hispanic ministry? Just take just a few seconds. I'm not going to take too long, and you'll answer in your mind. But what would those images be? What kind of people do you have you associated with, of course, with Latino Hispanic ministry? Which almost sounds like a dumb question, but there is a method to that madness of that question. And the reason I'm asking this question is that many people, in fact, a great bulk of people in the Episcopal Church equate Hispanic ministry with people that are totally Spanish-speaking, people that are here new to the country, whether it be an immigrant that's here a couple of years or one that has been here 10 or 12 years. But most of our images and the thinking, the perspective that we've got about Latino Hispanic ministry is that it is aimed and focused primarily at the Latino and Hispanic communities. And let me say that from the standpoint of the Episcopal Church, it has been working mightily, and I think with a good amount of success in various parts of the country in developing congregations and developing places where Spanish-speaking persons can go and have a place where they can feel emotionally and spiritually linked to their culture and the language. And so what we have been doing over the last 35 years or more of Latino Hispanic ministry in the Episcopal Church is to provide a haven, a cultural and a linguistic haven that I think has to be applauded and has to be maintained. Whatever we're doing, we should not lessen our efforts, resources, and our attention on this very important core group of Latinos and Hispanics. And by the way, and there will be a steady stream adding to this number over the years. It's not going to wane. Maybe it'll wane a little bit, but it certainly will be steady. And so our Latino Hispanic ministry aimed at the first generation and the immigrant and recently arrived Hispanic Latino has to be maintained, and that there's no question about it. The image that I have in my mind is that we're building a multi-story building, several stories, and we have the basement and the first floor finished, and that is where our most of our Latino and Hispanic ministry comes in. Now, having said this, we now have to face the reality, demographic reality, and the tremendous growth that is happening in the Latino ministry. And I'll show you an abbreviated slideshow that has been put together by Anthony Guillen. But it shows that our Latino and Hispanic community, it goes beyond just the first generation and the immigrant. It involves people who have been here for generations, some just the second generation, some maybe the fourth or fifth or more generations of Latinos. And one of the realities of our church in terms of our ministry is that these people who are born in the U.S., Latinos, Hispanic, born in the U.S., are not normally associated with our ministry. And that is something that astounds many people when they hear it for the first time. They believe that all Latinos are involved. And the reality is that most of our Latinos and Hispanics are two-thirds of them. And we'll see these numbers. So what I want to jump immediately now because our time is quite short, and Miguel is our moderator and also our timekeeper. So I want to go now into this PowerPoint, an abbreviated PowerPoint that has been put together by Anthony Guillen. Anthony Guillen, as some of you know, is the National Officer for Latino Hispanic Ministry. He's a one-man show, but he does a lot. And a lot of what we have done so far is a tribute to Anthony. So let me jump into the thing that he has put together. This first slide shows in 30 years what has been the growth of our Latino and Hispanic ministry in the United States. On the left side, you see the 1980 map that was predominantly what are called the original Hispanic states, mostly in the Southwest, Florida on the East Coast, but most of it in the Southwest and going up towards Washington. And then on the bottom side, we see in 30 years the growth that has happened. Tremendous growth and what I call infilling of the various states that had never seen a number of Hispanics, now has Hispanics and Latinos in their communities. And so what we have here is the expansion and the great increase of demographics of our community. In fact, the Hispanics are the fastest growing ethnic segment in the country, and they are going to be growing by the year 2050 by 167%. Right now, they account for about 51, 52 million of the U.S. population, and by the time that we get to 2050, it will be about 1/3 of the entire population. This chart here gives you just a quick idea as to the age distribution of Latinos, Hispanics, non-Hispanic whites, and also, well, those two primarily. You will notice that on the bars that say 15 to 14, all the way to 25 to 34, Latinos, Hispanics overwhelmingly have the upper statistics. In fact, 52% of the Latino Hispanic population is within this age of 5 to 34, which has a lot of implications as to the type of ministries that we should be developing. These, in effect, the younger population of 15 to 34 represents a major segment that should be strategically reached in so many ways. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see the gray bars, ages 45 to 74. This is for the non-Hispanic white, what we call Anglo in the Southwest. The Anglos represent, and they have the upper statistics in terms of this age range, which means that for the most part, the Anglo population is older, graying, and where compared to the Anglo population, the Latino Hispanic population is young, is fertile, is creating families. And if you want to put it into a ratio, on the Anglo side, the birth to death ratio is 1-to-1, meaning for every Anglo baby that is born, there is one death in the Anglo community. Whereas on the Hispanic side, the ratio is for every one death, there are 8 births of Hispanic Latinos. Tremendous difference, and one of the reasons why the community is growing left and right. Any questions, clarifying questions that you might have at this point? Okay, then let me move on. This chart attempts to give you an idea of the various types of Latinos and Hispanics that we have in the country. Anywhere from the Spanish-dominant Latino-Americana, piece of the pie here, 14.5%, to the one that is English-dominant, where it represents either bilingual or the English-dominant, which is right here, the red, Americanizado. Now, these labels are labels put on by a marketing firm, but that was their way of identifying and distinguishing between the acculturation levels and the cultural segments that we've got. So we've got a segment that is totally Spanish-speaking and a segment that is predominantly English-speaking. And then we get into the bicultural and bilingual. And then we get into those that prefer Spanish with a little bit of English. So this kind of gives you an idea here that our Latino Hispanic community is rather diverse in terms of its acculturation, in terms of its linguistic preference. And it begins to show you why our Hispanic Latino ministry has to be taking into account all these segments and not just one particular segment if we're going to be preparing ourselves for the future. Now, here's an astounding percentage statistic that some people that haven't seen it are quite surprised. Nearly 2/3 of our Latino Hispanic community is U.S. born. Either they're second generation or third or fourth or more. And this is a ratio that sometimes many people, if you ask the average person on the street, they will give you just a complete reverse. They'll tell you that the majority of our Latino population is foreign born and Spanish speaking, whereas we have just the opposite. 2/3 of the Latino Hispanics are U.S. born, and 2/3 of that U.S. born community is English dominant with some smattering of Spanish and some with little Spanish. This is just the abbreviated slide that I wanted to show you. What I want to do now is I want to Miguel, if we can show the other slide, please, the other PowerPoint.
Sure. Yes.
Now, while he's doing that, let me say that my principal message, if you take away nothing out of this webinar but this, I think it would be worth the price of admission here. And that is that our Latino Hispanic ministry has to something happened here, Miguel. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
That our Latino Hispanic ministry is composed of this entire iceberg. And you see the little ship that's navigating the waters. It is this, I call this the USS Episcopalian. This is navigating the Latino Hispanic waters, but what they're seeing primarily is the tip of the iceberg. And this tip of the iceberg represents 1/3 of the Latino Hispanic population, which is immigrant and the first generation, and which is the primary focus. In fact, I would say it's 99% of the focus of the Latino Hispanic ministry of the Episcopal Church. And this is also true, by the way, for Methodists, Presbyterians, Lutherans. We're not too much different from them. The ones that are different are the Roman Catholics. Now, 2/3 of the Latinos are what I call the multi-generational Latinos. These are the second generation on up, but they're not normally part of the Episcopal Latino ministry. There's many reasons for that, and we'll be seeing some of them, but for the most part, up to this point, they are not even on the radar screen of the evangelization campaign of the Episcopal Church. And this is one of the things that I'm trying to shed some light on, and hopefully we can do something about it. And this is one of the reasons why we're having this webinar, is to look at some of these realities. And so what I am proposing and I'm promoting is a transgeneration Latino Hispanic ministry that comprises all of the iceberg and that recognizes the need to address the entire Hispanic population rather than just the tip of the iceberg. If we're going to be preparing ourselves for the 2050s, we've got to begin to look at this submerged part of this iceberg. Now, the models of Latino Hispanic ministry, many of you who are involved in Latino ministry are well acquainted with this. It's primarily in Spanish. It's principally carried out as an adjunct or linked to an Anglo congregation for the most part. There are some that are self-standing. They are missions standing on their own. But the majority of our Latino ministry is linked in some form or fashion, or even piggybacked to an Anglo congregation. It is the ministry is overwhelmingly focused on creating congregations, liturgical congregational development, and that is where we put our great emphasis on. It is also, as we see, focused on the first generation and Latino Hispanic immigrants. Now, some of the creative initiatives that are being undertaken by dioceses and some parishes or coalition of parishes, for example, on the diocesan side, on the left side, we have some dioceses that are undertaking very creative means and ways of forming Latino Hispanic clergy. Instead of sending them to regular seminary, they are doing it themselves and doing it quite successfully. Good example is Diocese of Dallas and the Diocese of LA. There might be other dioceses that I'm not aware of, but this is one way that dioceses are trying to form their clergy without having such an expensive situation for our postulants that go away to seminary. They lose their connection with the community, with the families, and consequently we need something that is homegrown. And some dioceses are doing it. Now some dioceses are funding social services or community health groups. Some are engaged in community development and economic development projects. And some are developing new church plants with a very intentional multicultural flavor. And we've got an example here in the Diocese of Texas with Alex Montes and St. Mary Magdalene. That is a new church plant, and from the very beginning, it has been developed as a multicultural flavor, and with Latinos, both immigrants, first generation, and also multi-generational Latinos involved. Now, some of the parishes are doing, some have been set up, a coalition of parishes have set up a barrio church plant, where all together a coalition of parishes can afford at least a half-time clergy person who's going to do this in Spanish primarily. Of course, they're also funding social services or even having some direct services themselves. They're starting English as a second language programs. They're funding also community projects and social services and doing some outreach, particularly for preschool educational programs. So what this is meant to show you is that we don't have to have just a congregation that is developed. We've got a multiplicity of other possibilities that would lead and open the doors to developing a congregation. But many times this is kind of the entry point for many of our congregations to get involved and dioceses. Now, the usual pattern of Latino Hispanic models, we got the standalone congregation. This is the exception. Mostly their mission status is to be a mission. Very few parishes that are actually self-standing parishes. And some have even have developed a satellite worship site where the mother congregation goes down a good 10 miles away and develops a preaching station, or even a Sunday liturgical Eucharist. These home churches or small group cells are something that has been started. And by the way, this is one of the things that we're not doing enough. Both on the Anglo side and on the Latino side, we're not developing these vanguard approaches to meeting the community where they are with home churches. Paul, the disciple, did it that way. That's the way he grew the church. And so we've got a great model in Paul on how he did it, and we can also emulate. Now, on the congregations that are components that are connected to the annual congregations, Normally, it's done in the late morning or noon service. They might have developed a satellite worship site, which is the exception, and or they have direct social services or funding to a specific Latino provider. These are the usual and the kind of the norm of our existing Latino ministry. Now, who can participate? Or let me stop at this point. Are there any clarifying questions that somebody might have?
And if you do have a question, probably the easiest way to ask it or to make a comment is in the chat box. And that's on the left-hand side of the screen. And you can either ask it now or at any point in Al's presentation, and we'll try to resolve it. So we do have someone who's responding now.
Okay. Is that from Mike Tess?
Yes. Hi, Al.
Hello, Mike. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, but I'm having trouble typing everything I want to ask you.
Oh,
And
well,
I spelled...
you can also just say, I didn't... You can also just say your question aloud. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, it's all right.
Now,
You don't want me to text. So Al, here's my question. So as far as I know, the model has been to have a self-standing Latino service after your 2 English-speaking services. I've got a group of 12 families that are currently at Grace in Madison, and they've been without a priest for 3 years. So I was going to move them over and start a Latino service at 11:45. Bishop and our dean for parishes, our canon for parishes, didn't like that idea, and they were right. So in September, we're going to take those 12 families, and they're going to start coming to my 10 o'clock Anglo service, and we're going to start doing the Padre Nuestro and some Hispanic music, and slowly incorporate them into my regular service, and then have Latino ministry spring out of that. That's the plan. But my question is that being done anyplace else?
In some places, here in the Diocese of Texas, we do not have, I think, but one congregation that is attempting to do a bilingual or dual language service, which is it's a challenge for both the Anglo congregation as well as for the Latino group. And there's a lot of groundwork that has to be laid in doing that. It would be helpful if both on the Anglo and on the Latino side that they could be taken through a liturgical Spanish or liturgical English class, so that they become familiar with the verbiage, with the nomenclature, with some of the common phrases and so forth. That would facilitate this introduction. But back to your question, Anthony Guillen actually is the person who can probably answer that best because he's got the finger on the pulse. I think Dixie is doing something of that sort. Is that right, Dixie?
Talk or type. What we do is, first, we have 2 separate services, but for special things, we come together like we always do baptism and confirmation together as one group, and so we do a bilingual service so that we do things to reinforce one community. There's other sort of special events like we've done, events like the 3 Kings where we bring together Epiphany, like sort of the Anglo tradition and the Latino tradition, and merge those 2 traditions, what's true to each, and have that as a combined event. So we have kind of these special moments. Is that kind of?
I think your model, Dixie, and for Mike, the normal model is for these special events to take place. It's kind of putting your toe in the water, so to speak, to kind of get used to the idea. But if you're successful in doing this, you'll probably be one of a few, a rare circle of congregations that are tackling this approach.
And actually, that is where we started our ministry. We started that before we launched our MISA full time. So that was one of the ways we introduced the ministry.
Okay. Let me, if I, Mike, with your permission, let me move on. So we can, because we're going to have about 10 minutes at the end to have a discussion, and we can revisit some of the questions also.
Excellent.
Now, who can participate in this kind of transgenerational Latino Hispanic ministry? Well, obviously, the existing Latino congregations, if they are willing and called to do that, can open up an English service. And this is being done here in the Diocese of Texas, in Pasadena, Texas, where the rector recognized that he was losing the attention of the younger set, the youth and the grandchildren were beginning to bail out. And so in order to stop the kind of the hemorrhage of the young folks not coming to church, he started an English service on top of his Spanish service that he's got. And now he's getting a tremendous response from the youth and from the older children that attend. It is being very successful, but not every Latino congregation can do this. Father Pedro at St. Peter's, San Pedro's Pasadena, is bicultural and bilingual, and so he can go from one to the other without a problem. But not every Latino Hispanic clergy can do that. The majority are bilingual, but some cannot. And very frankly, some are not willing to do so because they are totally invested in having a Spanish culture and Spanish language type of congregation. So they opt out of this possibility. But this is definitely one of the possibilities is for Latino congregations to do this themselves. Of course, the Anglo congregations are the ones that can be called to diversify their constituency to invite multi-generation Latinos to their regular English services. This is, again, a challenge for many Anglo congregations because many are not willing to change their way of being, their cultural identity. And so you've got to have Anglo congregations who are willing and to risk and willing to diversify before they even begin to invite other ethnic groups or language groups into their congregation. Now, Anglo congregations with an existing Latino congregation can also be a bridge if they could somewhere or another facilitate the having these multi-generation Latinos and also the first-generation Latinos. So this model here, it has some, I think, a bigger rate of success and a greater possibility because the Anglo clergy can be a proactive bridge and an ambassador between the two, particularly in drawing these multi-generationals to the parish to begin with and then linking them with the first-generation Latinos that they have. I've already mentioned a diocese that is willing to start a multicultural church plant. That is definitely one way to do this. Now, we know that many of the multi-generational Latinos, not all of them, but some, are seeking the type of church that we are. We are a more tolerant, sacramental, and liturgical church. But I tell you one thing, if anything that I know is that we are the best kept secret in the Latino community. both in the first generation as well as the multi-generational Latinos. And so here we have a great task in front of us in terms of telling people who we are. Now, this transgenerational Latino ministry has to expand the ministry to include multi-generational Latinos, which, as I've said, they're totally out of the picture at this point. However, this should not lessen the focus that we have on the first generation and immigrant Latinos that we've got, but we've got to recognize the cultural and linguistic differences that we've got, and we have to reach each one of them in a different way. We have to recognize that Latino congregations have to expand their evangelization initiatives to particularly retain the second generation and especially the young kids, many of whom are leaving, in order to keep them in the church. And this is where our future leadership is going to be. But we've got to recognize that we have to be reaching this English-dominant or bicultural Latinos. From the standpoint of the Anglo congregation, I think in many instances what we're looking for is not so much, if you're looking at ministering to the multi-generational Latinos, it's not so much the Spanish-speaking capability of the person or the clergy, it is the cultural competence to know the difference culturally as to what are the distinctions between the first generation and the other generations that are born here, and which language they prefer and how to reach them. It is cultural competence, not necessarily fluency, unless, of course, you're involved totally in a Spanish-speaking congregation. Then, of course, you've got to be somewhat fluent in order to be able to minister and to pastor. Now, this transgenerational Latino ministry, in my estimation, opens up the doors to more Anglo clergy who are willing to be in this type of clergy and this type of ministry to the more English-driven and multicultural Latino, but it opens up the doors for clergy who are not totally Spanish-speaking, but who are still called to minister to Latinos, and this is one way to do it, through these multi-generational Latino ministry. A simple, somebody had a question?
Al, I just wanted to note that you asked me to notify you when we're 20 minutes out, so just so you know.
Okay, good. So we've got a little bit of time, and then we'll enter into a dialogue and question and answer. What's the strategy for Anglo congregations who are called to do this transgenerational Latino ministry? Well, one of them is, of course, that we've got to let people know that we exist. In whatever form or fashion that we can do that, we've got to put the Episcopal Church on the map. And how do we do that? Communications. Just like they say in real estate, you know, what's the secret about real estate? Location, location, location. In our strategy to reach Latinos across the multi-generational levels, we need communication, especially through the social media for the young multi-generation Latinos, because that's the way they communicate. The 18, the 15 to 34, most of them communicate through the social media. And if you're going to reach Latinos, young Latinos, this is the way to do it. And a parish has to engage in what I call radical hospitality, also a loving sense of invitation, and also a loving heart. Many instances, this hospitality, a loving invitation and a loving heart is 60% of what Latinos are looking for. The other 40% can be figured out in some form or fashion in whatever language that's necessary. But having a congregation that is open, and mind you, not everyone in the congregation has to be of like mind. However, there has to be a significant number that is kind of the the welcome wagon, so to speak, the group that is able to be this inviting and also providing this hospitality. An Anglo congregation has to really think about the pluralism that's required in today's world, the diversity that's required because of the realities of our demographics. Our United States of 2014 is not the United States of 1950. And it will not be the United States of 2050. And so what we have to be doing is that we have to be engaged, purposely engaged in preparing for the future and for the type of leaders that we're going to need, both on the Anglo side and on the Latino side. And so here, again, I'm repeating myself here, but it's cultural competence, not necessarily Spanish fluency, if you're going to engage with the English-dominant Latinos. That is not true for the total monocultural, monolingual Spanish speakers. There you have to have a Spanish speaking. Now you have to know the nesting places. Somebody was asking me, if I'm called to do this multi-generational ministry, where do I find them? They're not clustered in neighborhoods necessarily. They're all over the map. They're all over the place. They're on the south side of the city, the east side of the city, everywhere. And so how do you identify these folks? Well, one of the ways to do it is that you have to know what I call their nesting places, their organizations. This would hold true for the Puerto Rican community, for the Salvadoran community, for the Cuban community, and for the Mexican American community. These are just examples on the Mexican American side, the GI Forum, the LULAC, which is the League of United Latin American Citizens. In other words, that you have to understand who's who in your Latino community, and you have to be able to make some inroads and even attend their events and their meetings and get to know what this community is all about. If there's a baseball league that needs a chaplain, what a great opportunity for somebody to step in. I think Mike is doing that in his area. And it's not only the congregations that can engage in this transgenerational ministry. We're looking at the campus ministries, the Canterbury ministries, because they've got a ready-made inventory of young, multi-generation Latinos just right in their midst, including those parishes that are near universities. Even if they don't have a campus ministry, they can be an outreach to these young, bicultural, bilingual, or English-dominant Latinos. Congregations, especially that have a dynamite EYC, can do great stuff because they already have a relationship in their school with young Latinos in whatever form or fashion. They're classmates, they're friends, they socialize together. There might even be boyfriend and girlfriend. And so, to some extent, these two, the campus ministries and the EYCs, can be vanguards for identifying the young Latinos, which then leads to perhaps inviting them to the congregation. And some of the parishes have specialized ministries, like the Daughters of the King, the Men of St. Andrews, special event committees. They don't have to wait for the rector to issue a formal campaign or initiate a formal campaign to invite Latinos. These groups can do it by themselves. And how can they do it? They can do it through home churches, home meetings, Bible studies, Christian formations, healing ministries. This is a sleeper in terms of our ability to reach these Latinos that I'm talking about. I'm going to go through this very quickly. In fact, I'm going to put them all together here. Sometimes a parish might have to adjust what they do, especially for the second generation of Latinos who still want music to be lively and to have an upbeat sound into it. some second-generation Latinos do not like very frankly, some of the hymnology that we've got. And so they're kind of turned off by that. So whether the hymnology is adjusted or adapted or even including an additional service, you've got to pay attention to this thing about the music. Sometimes you cannot get around it. You have to do sometimes liturgical adaptations or a different format as Mike and Dixie are doing, where you've got this bilingual format that takes place. And of course, the Anglo congregation has to have the willingness to change. If you don't have this willingness to change, I think you're dead in the water. Got to have some people, and not every congregation is going to respond to the message. And not everybody in a particular parish or congregation is going to respond in a message. But we can select those people who self-identify. I believe that is the extent of it, because this is an abbreviated presentation of a much longer presentation. But I want to open it up for discussion, some questions. And again, let me just summarize my basic message. We cannot jettison the existing ministry that we're doing to our Spanish-speaking Latinos and Hispanics. In fact, we got to build up on it because there's going to be continued inflow into that. We've got to support it. At the same time, we have to recognize that we've got 2/3 of the Latino population that is not even at the table. And my message is that we have to bring these Latinos literally to the liturgical table. And we've got to figure out strategies and ways to do this. There are a number of people across the country who are already doing something, and one of the things that I'm trying to do is to contact these folks so that we have a case studies and also an ability to say, well, so-and-so is doing this, why don't you talk to them? Pretty much the question that Mike raised. Okay, so Miguel, I'll rely on you to be the kind of the moderator.
Sure, great. So there are several ways, as Al said, we're going to open it up to questions, and there are several ways in which you can ask a question or make a comment. One of the ways is in the chat box on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Al, you might notice that there's a question right now from Dara. There's also a question from Armantina a little bit earlier. What have we learned from Comunidades de Base within the Roman Catholic Church?
Okay.
Anna, just want to know, I saw Anna had her hand raised. If your microphone, if you want to type your question, you can do that, or if you'd like to call in, there's also a number on the sort of left-hand box, 1-855-742-3074, and I'd invite anyone who wants to call in and ask their question to Al directly to use that number. So variety of ways of asking.
Okay, can I just start selecting down the list here?
Sure.
Is that one way to do it, Miguel?
Yes,
Okay,
certainly, by all means.
For Dara Isaacson, how to reach Latinos in a very small community, sparsely populated state like Wyoming. I have found it in my experience that the sacramental ministry is one of the best ways to put ourselves out there. And it has great returns, but it also has some challenges related to it. It has great returns in that a lot of the Latinos are looking for a place that they can baptize their kids without having to go through a lot of lengthy and complicated hoops. This is for First Communion, for baptisms, for confirmation, and also they're looking for quinceañeras. Now, one of the things that I learned in my Hispanic group at my church is that it's very easy to become a revolving door sacramental factory, where you're just baptizing people left and right, you're having First Communions left and right, and so forth. And people come in, come out, they get their paper in their hand, they've got their fire policy, and they're gone. And so what I had to do was to develop an educational component and some prerequisites before anybody would be baptized. They had to be in the congregation for a good, at least a couple of months, so they get to know us. And then we would have to have classes so that they're understanding what is the sacrament that they're asking for, and to put it in the right context of what our theology is, and also to explain who the Episcopal Church is. So the sacramental ministry works great if you can couch it as a teaching ministry as well. But it is once the word of mouth gets out, people will be calling you. You don't have to be doing it. They will show up. Now, on the Argentina, you had a question about what have we learned from Comunidades de Base. Did you hear? Are you listening? Are you hearing me? No, no la oigo.
Yes, I hear.
Okay, good, good. I wanted to address to your question about Comunidades de Base. Now, Comunidades de Base is basically, in its more simple form, a community development, community organization ministry. It is where somebody is going out into the community, developing a connection with the community by going through a number of interviews, talking to people, spending a lot of time discussing issues that are relevant to a community, and also identifying leaders that are willing to coalesce around certain issues, justice issues particularly, social justice issues, issues that are very critical to some of our Latino communities. For example, the police situation, lack of lighting, gang situation, the drug problem. You know, you've got a multiplicity of things that we find. And so community development and community organization is one way to effectively reach these people that and where the church can be a part of the solution. But you've got to be out there. It's what we have learned, and what I have learned, very frankly, is that the discipline of community organizing and the discipline, the methodology of community development is excellent for developing church plants and new congregations, and for us to put our foot out into the community so that people are seeing us in black and white and carne y hueso, so that people begin to understand who we are, and at the same time we begin to understand what the community is all about. So we have a lot to learn from the Comunidades de Base because of the way they do it, the methodology, and their discipline of how they do things. By the way, let me say this: I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. I serve in Venezuela, and I'm employing the very community development techniques that I learned in the Peace Corps to do church work. It is transferable almost 100%. You just change the goals and the objectives.
Other questions? I don't think we ever heard from Ana Lang Soto.
Oh, you mean she didn't hook on?
I don't think so. Let's see.
Okay.
Anna, just to repeat, if you'd like to ask your question, please either enter it into the chat box or call in at the number in one of these boxes.
By the way, I can type something in the chat box myself, right?
Yes, but everyone also can hear you.
All right. What I'm putting in is my my email. Okay. And this is my email at the seminary, which is a good place to reach me. That is my email that you can reach me. I'm also going to be putting my cell number if anybody wants to talk to me individually. And so I'll be more than happy to respond. By the way, I'm also looking for places like Mike's and Dixie's that are doing these innovative multiple language or dual or language or bilingual language services, because I want to start a real good inventory of these congregations around the country. That is part of my grant responsibilities, by the way, and that is to become a informational clearinghouse for this type of information.
Well, um, uh, don't see your contact information yet. I think if you could just press enter or...
Oh, yeah, send. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Forgot that little detail.
Great. And since we're at 8 o'clock, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight's webinar, and thank you, Al, once again for presenting this, for offering, making this offering. I'll let Al just close in just a moment, but I guess I want to point out one of the things that we really value is your feedback. We here at ECF are constantly doing these webinars, and so it's really important to hear how we can improve. In your inbox right now, there should be an email with a survey link. So if you can take a moment and fill that out and just let us know how the presentation went and how we might improve it in the future as well. So once again, thank you very much for attending, and Al, I'll let you have the last word.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate those of you who signed on. Given the format that we've got, limited time, it's you've got the challenge of having a lot of stuff put into a very short period of time. Since I am also experienced in the field of traditional Latino ministry, in other words, immigrant and first generation, I can also be contacted for anything that you might have a question. In this, the primary emphasis, of course, on this was the transgenerational Latino ministry. That is not everybody's cup of tea, because some are still struggling to work their way through the traditional Latino ministry. And that's understandable, but many people are also anxious to hear how they can expand this concept of ministry that our church has to our entire population of Latinos and Hispanics. So I can speak traditional Hispanic ministry, but I also speak the other one. So I'm open to any questions, either by email or telephone.
Great.
And thank you, Miguel, for hosting this.
Certainly, certainly. So thank you again, everyone. And I guess I will have the final. I just remembered one little note.